Okay, before I start talking about the possible solution, I just want to say a little bit more about why the problem exists and why it exists so very, very strongly today. And I'm going to draw on the board a line representing the history of Islam. And it's not an exactly accurate line, but it is a somewhat representative line. Now, I think we all know and consider the golden age of Islam to have been the years that our beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was in Medina. And with him and the companions, it was like such a high level of belief and practice of Islam that it is almost unbelievable to us today. I think probably we can't even conceive of it. And if we are 5% of that, probably we are lucky. And when we had the death of our beloved Prophet, peace be upon him, there was a slight drop-off. I don't want to blame any particular dynasty or anyone, right? But the drop-off was not huge. It was just a bit. And then for 1,000 years, Islam stayed pretty much the same, really quite good. Not quite as high in spiritual belief and practices as the companions at the time of the Prophet, but really pretty good for 1,000 years. And then, about 400 years ago, a sort of cultural clash happened when the West, to a degree, conquered many of the Muslim lands, not just conquered, but came in and with great influence and great power, and we'll forget about the fact that the Europeans had a dark age here, in here somewhere, that they only got out of because of Muslims. But when they took off, they really took off, and they took off technologically. And so by the time this meeting took place here, they were technologically and scientifically much more advanced than the Muslims, particularly in instruments of war. So they came in and they conquered easily. And because they came in not only to conquer land, but they came in to conquer minds with a mindset. They tried to bring Christianity, which they didn't succeed in getting in. But what they did succeed in bringing in is secular materialism. Secular materialism actually began about the time of the scientific revolution with Sir Isaac Newton in Europe. And to give an idea of the effect that it had in Europe at that time, there was, I'm always blaming the same French philosopher, and I think it was Rousseau, who said on the basis of the findings of Sir Isaac Newton. Sir Isaac Newton is the one who brought most of Western science. Most of the rules of science that we know today come from Sir Isaac Newton. So, and he really sort of formulated science, and he put it on a very sort of objective basis. And in the French court, this French philosopher, who I believe was Rousseau, was because philosophers didn't make a lot of money, so they had to be a little entertaining also. So he's entertaining the French king and all the royalty, and he's talking about the new findings of Sir Isaac Newton, which were secular materialism. By the way, secular materialism, secular means world without God, and materialism means that the world is made up of little bits of stuff moved around by fixed laws. That's really what those two words mean. So it's the world without God and matter without spirit. And Rousseau was saying to the French king, if somebody could tell me right now where every bit of matter was in the whole universe, what direction it was going and how fast it was going, I could predict the future until eternity. And then he had his punchline, which was, so why do we need God? And everybody laughs. But it wasn't a funny thing at all, because it was really the beginning of people taking that seriously and starting to say, either directly or indirectly in their minds, why do we really need God? If every bit of stuff in the universe is just little bits of matter moved around by fixed laws and they all exist in the universe, where is the place for God? And so that idea became very, very powerfully ingrained into philosophy, into science, even into religious thought, and really everyday life, so that our Ummah started, which had stayed with really strong beliefs in Allah and what Allah wanted. Subtly, in subtle means, this was stolen more and more, and we started on a downward path until we have a world today that in many countries Muslims are so secular that they come to Malaysia, like from Turkey or Egypt or somewhere, they come to Malaysia and they say, wow, what an Islamic country. It's really wonderful to come to a real Islamic country. Because in Turkey, I think 99% of everybody is Muslim. But they are very, very secular Muslim. And it is because of this, secular materialism. Secular materialism was a very, very powerful idea, and it seemed to be true. I'll tell you tomorrow. Tomorrow's talk, by the way, is going to be, I will do the scientific proof of the existence of God based on Einstein's special theory of relativity. And part of that is a proof that secular materialism is just wrong. So, since there's no actual basis to secular materialism, one of the things that is very important as we want to change the world and make the world a right world, I don't think it would be possible to get a world where you are only writing right messages on consciousness in a world that believed in secular materialism. You cannot have secular materialism and right ideas, because secular materialism in its very basis is incorrect. Its basic premises just are not true. And so you are going to get false information from it. Anyway, so we had this 400 years of dropping down until we get to today. And so we have a choice today. We can just keep on going down. And, as I mentioned before, Shaitan has made this easy. No problem to just keep on going down. Or, you notice what we call this whole thing we are doing here, the Khalifah project. We are trying to get Muslims in the world to start remembering that they are Khalifah of Allah. We all know we're Khalifah of Allah, right? Before I go on with this diagram, I last year did a tour of Malaysia, giving talks about modern science and God, and then some other parenting talks, and took the opportunity to ask some questions while I was going around. The question is, how many know you are Khalifah of Allah? This is to several thousand Muslims who cared enough to come to an Islamic talk. Over 98%. So we all know we are Khalifah of Allah, right? So that's really a good start. That sounds quite promising, right? Then I say, how many know responsibilities? Because since Allah telling us in the Quran that He has created us to be the Khalifah of Allah is the most direct statement that Allah has given us as to why He created human beings. It seems like a whole lot of attention should be given to that, and the early scholars did give quite a bit of attention to it, and one of the obvious questions was, if we are Khalifah of Allah, what exactly does Allah want us to do? So it turns out that there are 3 responsibilities as Khalifah of Allah. I'll tell you what they are in a few minutes. But in asking this group, how many of you know what the responsibilities of Khalifah of Allah are? I don't know whether they really did or not, but the number who raised their hands to say they knew they were Khalifah of Allah, less than 5%, which isn't very good. But then, if this looks bad, then how many thought? How many? The question was, how many of you in the past month, in anything you have done at all in the past month, have thought of yourselves as doing it as Khalifah of Allah? .1%. Well, no surprise, we don't have a really wonderful world. Allah did not ask us to be His Khalifa and then totally forget about it, right? We know we are His Khalifa, but we don't think about it, so we just forgot it. And when you look at the literature, there is not a lot of literature about being Khalifah of Allah, which seems odd, in that, as I said, this is the most direct statement that Allah has ever made as to why He created human beings. So, because I work mainly with parents and children, and I've been trying to use some of the laws of learning to help parents and children have more success in raising their children to be not just excellent human beings, but excellent human beings and excellent Muslims at the same time. We are focusing the children's minds on the fact that they are Khalifah of Allah. So we call it the Khalifah Project. And one of the things that we are saying to them is, for the older kids, the younger ones we don't show this, but for the older kids, we show them a graph like this. And we say, to them, if this is true, and it seems to be true, how do you feel that this is where we are today? Does it make you feel good, or does it make you feel bad? Well, they say we feel bad. They said, so I say, do you feel bad enough that you would be willing to do something about it? And they say yes. And I say, well, there is a thing you can do, and it is a simple thing. Allah does not make things difficult for us. He's actually made it very easy for us. But we do have to do what he says. And so, one of the things we have to do, and it's really the key about being Khalifah of Allah, is the thing about choice. Right? It isn't what you do after you make your choice. I mean, that's very important also. But the whole idea of being Khalifah of Allah is to choose whether or not to follow the will of Allah. So we say to the kids, like in the school, in the Adni school where we have a model program going, we say, okay, if that's where you are today, if you don't do anything, you're going to keep going like this. But if you want to do something, one of the things that is possible is for you to start like this. You start back up. And what we need is somewhere along the line for a generation of young Muslims to say, we're not going down anymore. We just stop here, right? And consciously do this, you see. I mean, the thing is, we all live our lives, and most of us are probably reasonably good Muslims. But how many of us are really dedicating our lives to fixing the problems of the world and making the world the way Allah wants it to be? I think most of us are too busy with other kinds of things. And so are not really making this commitment to do what it takes. Now, so we say to these kids, you can be something, and the name of it is really quite nice, transforming generation. That this generation that comes along and says, we're not going down anymore, we stop here and we start back up. They are the transforming generation. And if we can have in the world a transforming generation rise up, we can bring Islam up very, very fast. Because, the time of our beloved Prophet in Medina, peace be upon him, you want to get a message to, I don't know how far Turkey is from Saudi Arabia, but it would probably take at least months to get a message even to Turkey. And China might be 6 months away. And America was impossible. But now, in literally minutes, we can communicate with people all over the world. The technology, all the knowledge that is available to anyone is available to Muslims. We can, if we choose, rise up and become the ummah that Allah wants us to be. We can become an ummah who stand out from other people because of how hard we work, how hard we study, how well we do in school, how kind we are to others, how honest we are, how you look at how we fulfill our spiritual practices and values. Once we start standing out like that and stand out in every single field of endeavor, then we will be way up on this path. And one of the reasons that Muslims we are not really looked upon all that well today. There's not too many people looking up to Muslims in the world today. And the reason is because we are down at the bottom today. And it's really hard to look up to someone who's down at the bottom. We need to get up to the top. A few years ago, there was a Nobel Prize winner who was allegedly a Muslim. And it was like around the Muslim world, people are like cheering and how wonderful, right? A Muslim won a Nobel Prize, how wonderful, how great for us. Instead of saying, why is it anyone but a Muslim ever gets a Nobel Prize? Because we should be at the top of everything. We should be the best achievers in absolutely everything. This is part of what it is to be Muslim. And we need to start raising generations that believe that. I can just say it to you and you probably know it's true, but we want to raise generations that have not just heard it, but that they feel it, that it is burning in their heart, right? That this desire to transform Islam and make it the top of everything, that they're in their heart, they are burning with love for Allah. They don't just pray because they are supposed to, and they don't just study because they are supposed to. They love to because they want to. They want nothing more than to do the things that please Allah. And as far as being Khalifa of Allah, they want to be really proud that they are Khalifa of Allah, because it is the greatest honor. I mean, Allah has created millions and millions and millions of different physical forms, and none of them had the opportunity or the ability to be the Khalifa of Allah. And then you come to Adam, and then through Adam to us. And we are sitting here as Khalifa of Allah. The greatest honor that could possibly be given in the whole universe. You know, I mean, think what it is really saying to be Khalifa of Allah, or think in the beginning what it means when Allah breathes His Spirit into us before we are born. When Allah breathes His Spirit into us, He breathes some of His God nature into us. He breathes in some small number of His attributes in some small portion. A sufficient number of attributes in a sufficient portion to carry out the role as Khalifa of Allah. And the role of Khalifa of Allah is to continue His plan by our choice. That from the light at the beginning of the universe up to Adam, Allah took 100% responsibility for everything that happened. And then He says to Adam, and then through Adam to us, now I am going to share some of that responsibility with you. I'm going to breathe into you some of my nature. So He has actually breathed into us some God nature, and He shares with us some God ability, and then tells us to use it rightly, to choose to use it as He wants us to use it. The word Khalifa translates in English to vicegerent, which is not a very well-known word in English among English speakers who are not Muslim, but it's a very accurate word. The vicegerent means, in English, somebody who acts in the place of the leader or the king. They are not the leader or the king. They act in the place of the leader or the king. They carry out the will of the leader or the king. They don't carry out their own will. They don't decide what they want to do. The leader or the king, or in this case Allah, has said, this is what I want, and that's what they carry out. And they carry out the will of the leader or the king by the delegated or the given powers of the leader or the king, not by their own powers. And that is exactly the position we are in. But I mean, what an enviable, what an unbelievable, exciting position to be in, to be allowed put this way, a share in God activity. Like the activity that Allah was doing, He says, now I'm going to share with you the ability to do some of this and let you choose to do it. But you have to do it by your choice. And then we didn't choose to do it. I mean, it is like bizarre. You know, it is really, it's like the world is insane. And actually, I do in a paper I've written, I do claim that the world is technically insane. Insane is not a word from psychiatry or psychology. Insanity is a legal term. Insanity means that your perception of reality is so far from the truth that you constitute a danger to yourself or to others. And that is exactly the position that we're in the world today, and secular materialism has taken us there. That the beliefs that have come and have got so ubiquitously or everywhere, they are placed everywhere, and they are so powerful that they have misled us to the true nature of the physical existence and our relationship to the physical existence and our relationship to God. They have misled us so badly that we are so badly misperceiving our reality that we constitute a danger to ourselves and to others as a human society. I mean, human society is at risk of extinction, of extinguishing itself, you know, and that is the indication of our insanity. So we need to come back to sanity. Sanity is to be Khalifa of Allah and carry out that role. So we want to get children and adults, of course. We want to get lots of people. We want to get every Muslim enthusiastic about this. As a matter of fact, while there are differences of opinion on this particular matter, it is my opinion and interpretation, and I think quite clear from the language in the Quran, that Allah has made every human being his Khalifa, not just Muslims. So every human being in the whole world has that responsibility upon them. They may not know it, and some of us may know it and do a bad job, but we still remain Khalifa of Allah, because we always have the opportunity to make the choice to do what Allah really wants us to do. So we want to start this kind of thing happening. We don't want to let this go down. We don't want to go down anymore. So some things we need to do. One, we need to destroy secular materialism. Remember I said secular is world without God. One of the things, so this is one of the reasons why tomorrow I will be talking about a scientific proof of the existence of God that could not be denied by a Western scientist, which, by the way, has already not been denied by a Western scientist, because John Archibald Wheeler, who won the 2003 Einstein Prize in Physics, has had a look at all of the physics that I'll be talking about tomorrow, and says it is all accurate, and in general, the assumptions I make from it, he is in agreement with. So here is where we really then, how we start making the change. It would be nice to just be able to wipe out all of the parts of society that bring the bad messages, but we just can't do that. So as we are striving as a generation of Muslims, and then the young generation coming up, to truly be the transforming generation to bring the Ummah back up to where it should be, and as we are striving to be good Khalifa of Allah in every way, we have to, since we can't get rid of all the negative influences right away, we have to give the young people a way to fight against the negative influences and increase the positive influences. We need to give them an armor. Part of that armor will be that knowledge, that scientific knowledge. If somebody wants to come to me who used to be an atheist and say to me, that's nonsense believing in God, I say, the nonsense is you saying God doesn't exist. You prove all of my data that I base my knowledge of the existence of God on, you prove that wrong, and then you can tell me there is no God. But until you can prove my data wrong, you're talking gibberish. So the atheist, and to be honest, until new findings in physics came out, atheism was a very strong position logically, right? They were wrong, but it was a very strong logical position. They are now in a very weak logical position and a very weak scientific position. So where it used to be, you could make a good argument against the existence of God, or certainly against the belief in God. Now, you can't make an argument at all. And so you are left, if you want to be an atheist, a little bit looking like an illogical fool who doesn't know the modern scientific facts. And you know, the way the West is, they're not going to want to look like illogical fools who don't know the facts. And I think are going to be moved in a series of steps. When we get to talk about learning, we'll talk about shaping. But small steps will start taking place. Once you accept some of this data showing that secular materialism cannot be, and look, I don't want to say that everyone who hears this proof of the existence of God is going to say, oh, wow, yeah, God exists, right? But at a minimum, you're going to have to say, oh, wow, that does sound like some strong evidence for the existence of God. You have to say at least that much, unless you want to deny all of modern physics. So anyway, this thing that Allah has blessed us with, when He gave Adam, through Adam, all of us, this inner speech and the ability to talk to ourselves, here is what we can do with it. we'll forget that we'll just keep ignoring the physical environment, because, as I say, it very seldom harms us. Social is really a terrible thing. You know, you're a teenager. You go to an Islamic school, and after school you're 15 years old. And you go out and you've got 4 friends, and they pull out a pack of cigarettes and they pass them around, and everyone takes one, and it's your turn. You know, 4 friends have just taken a cigarette, and now they're holding it out to you. Big social pressure time. Right? So social influence comes in, writes a message, you know, have a cigarette. Cigarettes are the in thing. Writes a bad message. Now, the child could say, must be cool, my friends do it. So a bad came in, and they added a bad with their inner speech. And they say, I don't want my friends to think I'm scared. So they add another bad with their inner speech. And they say, trying to think of something else good you could say about a cigarette. There's not much you can say. People will, the younger kids will see me smoking and think I'm cool. Okay, so what they have done, a bad message has come in, and they have strengthened that bad message 3 times with their inner speech. So they couldn't stop the message coming in, but what they do with their inner speech is where Allah gives us the free will to be His Khalifa. Because that child could have said, instead of building on the strength of it, they've got to be kidding, cigarettes kill you. So bad, which generates an inner speech which is good. I think my friends look foolish smoking cigarettes. Allah doesn't want us to put anything bad in our body, so I would never smoke a cigarette. So what He has done, although there has been a bad social influence come in, which He has very little control over, the bad influence coming in, He has now, with His inner speech, He has taken away the power of that message 3 times. Now, one of the things that is the case is that when a message comes in, it cannot be erased. It would be nice if it can be erased, but you cannot erase it. But when you put these goods here like this, they are not really out at the side like that, but they are really like this. So you overwrite the bad message, so it is no longer intelligible to you. And so you have destroyed its power. The same thing is true, and we teach the kids. I mean, I'm not just telling you this so you'll know it, right? This is the thing we teach the kids in the school from I'm not sure, I think certainly down into the lower primary grades, they can understand this much. They have no trouble understanding that this is how they learn. I haven't done it in Standard 1, but I think I've done it in Standard 2. So, say for instance, a good message comes in. A girl comes up to her friends and says, during Salat today, I just felt so close to Allah. It was just so wonderful, you know. I just feel like I've got this huge power inside me, just bursting, you know. I just can't tell you how good I feel. So that's the social message that comes in, right? So a good message comes in. So they could think, stupid girl. She's lying. She didn't really feel that. I don't like prayer no matter what she says. So they could have a good message come in, and they can destroy that bad message with their inner speech. And Shaitan, of course, is always there to help you if he can, you know, if there's a little opportunity to guide your inner speech in a certain direction, shaitan will be there ready to go. But what if this girl, the girls who hear this, they think, wow, that sounds wonderful. You know, I wish I could have that. So they add a good to a good. And another one says, oh, Allah was so merciful to her, I hope He can be merciful to me. I want to experience that too. And then another one says, hearing that makes me, I like to pray anyway, but hearing that makes me want to pray even more. So they have a good message come in, and they have built upon its power with their inner speech. And this is what we are teaching the children to do as part of what we call the Khalifah method, right? It is to be aware of themselves as beings who are constantly being bombarded by influences. And every influence that comes in is going to take you to Allah or take you to shaitan. And that as Khalifa of Allah, it is your responsibility to look at these influences and make choices. And so when an opportunity comes in to build upon a good influence, you then say, as Khalifa of Allah, I want to say some good things, because if I say some good things about this good social influence that came in, it will have even more positive impact on me. Or if a bad message comes in, say, oh, I don't want that bad message harming me and my consciousness. I'm going to write over and over and over that with good messages and get rid of its power, because you know, the bad messages are for shaitan. I want to stay away from anything that shaitan wants. And by teaching a technique like this, right, very simplistic thing, 5-year-old kids can understand this. And then children start to be more resistant to the negative influences around them, and able to build upon the positive influences that are coming in. Then if you have a lot of children in an environment doing this, or the whole household and the family are doing it, then there are more positive social influences coming in, and maybe they are getting reward for this. Now, I'm not going to go into learning theory yet, that's one of the later talks. But one of the things I'll just mention about reward, anything that is rewarded tends to increase in rate and magnitude in the future. It happens more often, and it happens to a greater degree. And reward can be good feeling inside, can be someone else's kind words to you, can be all sorts of positive things. Doesn't mean you give somebody 10 ringgit, right? Most reward should be the feeling, or to know that Allah loves it as His Khalifa. So we teach the children to look at the world that way, and to consciously start using their inner speech to stop the power of the bad influences and increase the power of the good influences. Does that all sound logical and reasonable? Yes, sister.
Like the thing that I was asking the question before, so it sort of explains to me as a person, like that good bad message that comes, it's a good message, is the inner speech that you say yourself is what counteracts it basically. So
see, there is a reality. We living in the physical world, we are all going to have some bad influences. Not from the physical, but because we are physical beings, because we are not perfect, we are not pure soul beings. The nature of being a physical human being means that we are going to have some negative influences upon us. So there will be some negative influences written in here. This idea of only, of having a consciousness like this with only goods written in it, no bads at all, that may exist in paradise, but it's not going to exist in this world. The idea in this world is to have as few as possible negative influences written in here, and to have them overwritten. Remember, this is the very important part. You get a bad written in there, and you overwrite it. So it is in there, but it loses its effect on you. And that is the choice you have to do with your inner speech. Allah gave us a tool to stop the bad influences, a tool to fight shaitan. This inner speech, ability to speak to ourselves in a symbolic language and say, I choose good over bad. That this is a very powerful tool. We could not be Allah's Khalifa without this, and we could not succeed in doing what Allah wants and becoming and overcoming evil in the world unless we had this. But this is a very powerful tool to use for that.
Another one, right? How is the soul and the inner speech related?
Well, how is the soul and the inner speech related? In the daily classes, I have actually answered that. I'm a little hesitant to just give an answer without the build-up to the answer. I mean, I might have spent a whole day saying things, but I'll just tell you without giving the evidence about why I'm saying this. The connection between the soul and the inner speech is a connection through light, through information transmitted through light, and actually all information in the physical existence is transmitted through light, but Allah tells the material existence what to do by sending messages through light. When we get to the part where we talk about the progressive development of the physical universe from the light at the beginning of the universe up until Adam, I will tell you something that sounds a lot like the stages of evolution, but it is not evolution, because I will show how Allah makes the changes at the stages, not natural selection or what's the other one they did after natural selection? Genetic mutation, right? That these things cannot work. That Allah actually sends messages to alter the material existence in a certain way, and I can show it actually from physics how it actually happens. So this is the connection between soul and the physical body, and also the soul and the inner speech.
Which means the soul in everyone is faultless, is pure. That's what it was meant before.
Well, this is a little bit of a debatable issue, and I mean, see, when we get into these things that I discuss in the day classes, which are very long and complex classes, and I just say them, they may sound a little bit strange. I am not entirely sure that the soul stays pure. That it may be that the soul is created pure, and that to get entry into paradise, we have to then make a free choice to remain pure, or to become pure again. And that this is what our time in the physical existence is we come in pure, but then we become unpure. And as we become unpure in body and consciousness, we pollute to some degree our soul. And the purpose of us is, of being Khalifa and living right as a Muslim in the physical world, is to purify ourselves by our choice, so that when we enter paradise as a pure soul that has become pure by choice, not by the making of Allah pure. And that just to go a little further with this, that I think this may be what hellfire is also. That for those people who don't make it in this world, that hellfire is not technically punishment, but that hellfire is like a finishing of the purification of the soul. If we don't do what it takes in the physical world, where Allah gives us the opportunity to purify ourselves and our soul in the physical existence, then He doesn't just throw us away, he then puts us in hellfire where, and I don't think it's going to be pleasant at all, so I mean, but he doesn't put us there to punishment, like, you know, oh, you did wrong, I'm going to hurt you. I don't think Allah works that way. I think that Allah puts us in hellfire to finish purifying our soul so that we can still have an opportunity, particularly if we are Muslim and believe that there is no God but Allah. As to whether or not other people have this opportunity, I think there is still open to debate, although not everyone agrees it's open to debate. But at least for Muslims who know that there is only one God, Allah, that we may have to go through some really terrible times, and they may be long, terrible times in hellfire to purify a soul that has been really made impure by what we have done in this world before we are allowed entry into paradise. So anyway, Khalifa. We finish at 5? Okay. I'm not going to have time to finish all of this, but I just want to say a little bit about Khalifah of Allah. There are 3 responsibilities. And these 3 responsibilities, they were determined by the early scholars, and I'll write them the way that the early scholars said, and then I'll tell you the way we say them for the kids. 1, perfect self. 2, perfect society. An interesting wording on the 3rd one. Perfect. Sorry about the squeaks. World of space and time. This is very interesting wording about 1,200 years ago to perfect the world of space and time. So for certain reasons, having to do with actually more than anything else the use of English, that the word perfect is spelled the same as perfect. And most people know the word, this spelling, as perfect. And many people, particularly kids, don't know the word perfect, meaning to make yourself perfect. They just know perfect, meaning be perfect. So it is confusing in its language, I think. So we say for the kids, we don't have a poster handy, but make yourself good. Now listen careful to the word. It's make yourself good, but not make others good. Help others become good, right? Because Allah does not make us, right? It's the whole idea of being Khalifa. So it is our responsibility to make ourselves good, but for others, we don't make them. We don't try and make them be good. We try and help them become good, and we try and make the world good. We say clean and beautiful, pleasing to Allah. Those three things cover everything there is to do. There's no more to do in the whole world than those 3 things. And we get the children, So I actually, sometimes every day in school, the kids say this like an oath, right? I am Khalifah of Allah. It is my responsibility to make myself good, to help others become good, and to make the physical world good, clean and beautiful. So that is quite a nice statement of what Allah wants us to do, and quite simple, and little tiny kids can understand it, right? Make yourself good. And actually, you know, I said that technically the word for in English for Khalifa is vicegerent, but often because vicegerent is a complex and little-known word, often people use the word representative. But for real little kids, like in kindergarten and that, they don't know what a representative is. So we say to be a helper for Allah. So, you know, Allah wants you to be His helper. He wants you to make yourself good, right? He's not saying Allah's not going to make you good. Allah wants you to make yourself good. Allah wants you to help the other kids become good. And you know, I mean, what one time, like, let's see what you think on that. I can see here a little piece of white string on the carpet, right? So in a classroom, I was in a classroom, and I was saying about the third one. These were kids about, I think, standard 2. I said something about make the physical world good, clean, and beautiful. And then there was something on the carpet about like this. And I said sometimes that was a bigger thing on the carpet, but I picked up a little thing like this. And I said sometimes at home, as part of making the world clean and beautiful, if I see on my carpet a little thing like this, I'll pick it up because it's a tiny, tiny thing. But everything you do is making the world a little bit cleaner and more beautiful for Allah. So it isn't just that we have to do the big things, we have to do the little things too. And if you do lots and lots of little things, then it'll make it easier to do lots and lots of big things. And then I said, actually, the floor is kind of messy. Do you want to be Khalifah of Allah and make the physical world really good and the room clean and beautiful? They all jump up and they, 2 minutes later, the carpet is perfect. And every little pencil shaving and everything had been picked up and put away. And you see, kids, this is getting, and then when they do it, I say, that is just so nice of you to do that. It is just so wonderful to see you acting as Khalifah of Allah. Because we're all Khalifah of Allah, but many people don't even care or bother about being Khalifah of Allah. And here, all of you, you're just little kids, and you care enough about being Khalifah of Allah to make the carpet in the room really clean, So it's really nice. I'm sure Allah really appreciates that. And then the kids start getting nice feelings in their heart about, being Khalifah of Allah and doing the good things. And then if they exist in a society where, this is happening every day in their classroom, this kind of people are talking to them that way. And when they go home, their parents talk to them in that way. And then later on, we're suggesting to parents that maybe they can try and help their children associate with other kids who are involved in the same kind of thing and get these same kind of plans going in the local community, right? Maybe get some parents together and say, well, look, here we have a nice way of parenting to help the kids become a bit better. And I just want to tell you something about this. Maybe later we'll have a whole lesson on how you teach children to be Khalifah of Allah. But interestingly, last year at Adni School, where we got a really late start with this, we didn't get to do really the whole program. And one of the amazing things was when we did a survey of parents, every single parent surveyed, 100% of the parents surveyed said they saw positive changes in their children due to their participation in the Khalifah project. I mean, how many programs get a result like that 100% of parents see a positive change in their kids? And they also had their kids coming home saying things like, we're going to be part of the transforming generation, and we're going to make Islam way up high, we're going to be the best Muslims in the whole world. And of course, parents like to hear things like that. And then small things, anecdotal things happen, like someone will say, oh, it was really hard to get my daughter up for Fajr prayer before. And now, she's in there waking us up in the morning saying, come on, get up, it's time for prayer. Or that we go out for a meal and the parents just, like in a restaurant, just start eating. And the kids say, no, dua first. So because although when you hear me talk, all of my talks are going to be really about the scientific part and the scientific relationship of Islam. But please don't ever think I'm saying we want to shift away from the spiritual part of Islam to the scientific or objective part, right? We really need, we absolutely have to have the spiritual part. Part of that big drop-off that I erased already, I forgot to mention part of the reason for that drop-off, that Allah has told us very specifically, and scholars have been real specific that this is what Allah meant. Allah has said that I have given you 2 Quran. I have given you the physical book, the spiritual book that I have given to the beloved Prophet Muhammad for you to read and to know. And I have also created a universe for you to look at. And as you look at this universe, you are to better know me and my creation and your relationship with me and your place in creation. And then, this is the very important part, Allah said, if you do not read these 2 Quran in a balance, you will not understand the religion I have given you, and your practice of it will go badly. And so, in that 400 years, for 1,000 years, part of the time that they concentrated on one, part of the time they concentrated on 2. But there was no big opponent like secular materialism. When the big opponent of secular materialism came along, Muslims got desperate and retreated just into one of the 2 books. A beautiful book, the best book in the whole world, but Allah has told us we have to read both in a balance. If you just have the spiritual side without understanding the objective side, you are not going to understand the religion that He has given us, and the practice will go badly. And so this is a really big motivation for kids in school to learn everything, because we tell the kids, learning 2 + 2 = 4, this is spiritual knowledge. This is knowledge Allah wants you to have. It is religious knowledge. It is as religious knowledge as knowing how to pray. We have to learn both. We can't say this is spiritual and this is secular or this is academic, right? There is knowledge that Allah wants us to have. Allah wants us to have the total body of knowledge of all of existence. And He gave it to us in 2 books, and He wants us to read them both. And school for children is a really good place to start reading the book of the universe, the physical universe. So, part of the solution to the problem then is to start raising up a generation that understands that there are a lot of negative influences out there, that many of these negative influences are going to be coming in on them. They need to see how these influences are coming in. They need to be able to predict what the effect on them will be, and they need to be willing to choose by their free will, understanding they are Khalifah of Allah, to make sure that if a bad message comes in, they wipe that bad message over so many times with a good message that they can't even see its effect anymore. And if a good message comes in, they write over it and over it and over it until it becomes real powerful and big and very influential in their minds. And if they just keep doing that, and then if in the home you just do, part of the Khalifa method is this really simple thing. You remind the children every day in a lot of different ways that they are Khalifah of Allah, so they don't forget. Because as I showed earlier from my survey, people tend to forget. So we don't want the kids to forget. We would like, if we ask the question to the kids at school, how many of you in the past hour in anything you did thought of yourselves as doing it as Khalifah of Allah? And we get 100% say yes. Okay, that's one thing. Keep reminding kids they are Khalifah of Allah. You watch the kids. For every good thing that they do and every good characteristic they have, be sure they get positive notice for it. Be sure they get praise for it. Be sure they get smiles for it. Be sure they get hugs for it. Be sure they get positive notice for all the good things about themselves. And do that lots and lots of times. And the third one is, because we have to understand that there's going to be a lot of bad influences, and the children need a lot of guidance. Remember, we were talking about Britney Spears. She had no one to guide her, right? So we don't want these kids to go without guidance. So you set firm, reasonable rules for the children. And then you enforce those rules very, very consistently. Not just when you feel like it, not just when you're not tired, right? You enforce them all the time. But you enforce them always with kind discipline, without harshness. Kind discipline means, like, if I'm giving a talk like this, and it's in a classroom, right? Like, standard 6 boys who tend to be a little hard to keep their attention for a half hour. And I'm talking, and one of them starts talking to his friend. They'll say, "Excuse me, brother, I'm not saying this because I'm mad at you, but I was just talking, and I'm saying some things that I think are going to help all of you kids in the room have better lives and become better Muslims, and I think this is the information Allah wants you to have, and you're not listening, and you're talking to your friend, so not only you're not listening, he can't hear either." I say, "Do you think that is right?" And he'll say, "No." I say, "Well, if it's not right, do you think Allah likes it?" And they say, "No." I say, "Do you think Shaitan likes it?" And they say, "Yes." I say, "Well, do you want to be helper for Shaitan?" He said, "No, no." So I said, "Well, then you probably shouldn't be doing it, should you?" He says, "No." So I say, "Do you think in the future, when you feel like, maybe when I'm talking, and you feel like you want to talk to your neighbor, you can use your inner speech. Just before you even start talking to your neighbor, you say to yourself, 'Oh, I was just going to talk to my neighbor, but if I do that, this is something Shaitan loves. I want to do what Allah wants. So I'm not going to talk to my neighbor.'" And also we do self-control exercises to show them how they have self-control. So, and then I say to him, "So in the future, I can expect you won't talk while I'm talking?" He says, "That's right, I won't." And I said, "Oh, thank you so much." I said, that's really good. That's what being Khalifah of Allah is about, right? See, you're supposed to make yourself good. So you have decided to quit talking when the teacher is talking, and that is helping to make yourself good. So that is really wonderful. I say, "Thank you so much." And I say, "And remember, I didn't tell you this because I was mad at you. I tell you this because I really care about you, and I want to help your life be really good, and I want you to grow up to be a really good Muslim." And I would call this an example of really kind discipline. You see, everything I say to him nice things. I don't use any harsh words. I let him know that I care about him. I tell him why I'm telling him what's wrong, how it will help him. And by the way, if you look at the Sunnah of our Prophet, peace be upon him, you will see that this is very much the way that he talked to children. He would come up, he would say, "Oh, I see what you're doing. That isn't actually the right thing to do. It would be much better if you would do this other thing. Are you willing to do that?" And they say, "Oh, yes." And then he would usually do something like ruffle their hair and make a blessing upon them, and then walk away, and the child feels really wonderful to be given some positive guidance. And children do like positive guidance if positive guidance is given in a positive way. So that's the 3 simple things. Remind them they are Khalifah of Allah, give lots of reward for everything good about them, set firm rules for them, and apply those rules consistently with firm discipline. You do those 3 simple things, absolute guarantee you'll have improvement in the behavior of your children. So for today, that is the end of our first talk. Tomorrow's talk is about the scientific proofs of the existence of God, which starts at 9:30. Is that the time we agreed upon, 9:30 tomorrow? And I thank everybody for coming. I appreciate it very much to have the opportunity to talk to you about these things. And Assalamu alaikum, dear brothers and sisters. Yes, well, I tell you, I don't really have an answer for that as to what to do, except if this idea that I'm talking to you about is as successful as it seems like it is going to be, probably in those schools you are talking about, they will adopt some similar thing also, and they will be using similar ideas as they teach the recitation of Quran. it would, I mean, it's just a reality. If you're not there, you can't do these things. Hopefully other people will do them for you. By the way, I'll just take a minute and mention this. It's a thing that I know many mothers work because they have to and there's no choice, right? So I'm not saying quit your job. I'm just going to tell you something about a reality of children. That you have heard of imprinting. Imprinting is where, like if some duck eggs hatch and they don't see a mother duck, but they see a human being, they'll follow this human being around like they are the mother duck. That link that happens in the brain of the ducks is called imprinting. Until recently, people didn't think children imprint because it happens so slowly. But it takes 5 to 7 years for children to imprint. So, and imprinting with children means that the mother becomes a very important person in their lives. Just because you are their mother, you are not an important person in their life. You are an important person in their life because of the amount of good time you spend with them. And so, if you are not there, it is a difficulty. And they have shown studies where a child who has imprinted on the mother, who has not imprinted on a mother, you put him in a room maybe this size, and the mother will be sitting here talking to somebody, and there'll be some toys over there. The kids will just go play with those toys. They'll never even look in the direction of the mother. For children who have imprinted on the mother, they'll still go play with the toys, but every few minutes they'll be just checking on to make sure the mother is there, because the mother has become very important to them. And then when your child is, say, 16 years old, right, and you want to say to your child, take my advice on your mother, and they haven't imprinted on you, you are just another human being in their life, right? Well, although Allah has said the importance of the mother, that was assuming that the mother is going to develop that imprinting role on the child. So for those who have to work, please be sure to spend as much quality time, I don't like that term really, but quality time, get really, really close with your child and spend as much time with your child as possible, because you do want your children to imprint on you. If your children don't imprint on you, you will be a less important person to them later in your life. Yes?
You said that it's 5 to 7 years for children as the first 5 to 7 years?
First 5 to 7, yeah. Yeah, after that, it's pretty much fixed. Either they have or they haven't. I mean, later on you can try and develop a good relationship, and I know people who are trying to develop good relationships with their 16 or 18-year-old daughters or sons after no imprinting at all has taken place, and they are really struggling.
Where have their inner thoughts, their inner speech gone?
Well, I mean, their inner speech has just been free, has just been open to write bad message, right? With no counter positive messages. In other words, they didn't connect with Islam, they didn't connect with their parents, they didn't connect with positive peers, they didn't connect with any positive things in society, so they have left themselves open just mainly to the negative messages, and probably with their inner speech are supporting those negative messages.
Which means the inner speech that they had when they were growing up, all the things that was learned about Islam has gone.
Well, yeah, your inner speech doesn't mean that you're going to use it for good, right? You can say with your inner speech, oh, drugs are cool. My friends are all using drugs. Drugs are really cool. So your inner speech is going to be an immoral thing. This is where the freedom comes from that Allah gave us. We can use our inner speech to say something good and make ourselves move toward Him, or we can make an influence with our inner speech to move us toward Shaitan. And many Muslims apparently have been writing messages in there, plus the fact that 0.1% only remember they are Khalifah of Allah. We want to use the concept of Khalifah of Allah for the reason that if this was a nail, right? If a nail was made like this and I hit this with a hammer, and this was the bottom of the nail, it's not going to go into a piece of wood at all. So you get it, the energy that you put in gets dissipated over a large area. The reason that a nail has a sharp edge is so you will have a focus of energy. And this is the reason why we have the concept, or use the concept of Khalifah of Allah, to put everything good. And actually Allah has told us this, that we are supposed to focus on the fact that we are Khalifah of Allah. All our responsibilities, all our religious duties, we do as Khalifah of Allah. And we do with intent to do as His Khalifah what He wants us to do by our free will. So that is what has happened. We have let a generation come up. Consider how bad things are right now, right? Unless we do something, they're not going to get better, right? Remember behavioral drift. It's going to drift worse. It's not going to drift better. And as bad as it is already. I mean, I remember 15 years ago, I came to Malaysia, when I first came to Malaysia, I never once read one of these bad stories that are happening almost every day now. What about 15 years from now, if we don't do anything to make the Malaysian society and the world a better place? I'm not going to be here, so I won't see it. But I pity your kids, right? And so, I know you all love your kids and you love Islam, so you have a real high responsibility to do something to make sure that's not the world that your children have in the future, the one that is drifting more and more towards shaitan and more horrors, but a world that is uplifted towards a high and successful Islamic ummah like we're supposed to have. Well, you're getting into some very complicated theological issues here. I certainly don't want to offend anybody's interpretation of Islam. I just want to offer a possible alternative. That when it is said, as it is correct, as you are correct about saying, that Allah first offered the opportunity to be Khalifa to the mountains and the seas and I think the sun and the moon, and scholars have said many other things. Actually, everything had been made that offer. The reality is, none of them could accept. I mean, it isn't a matter of them saying no. It's they did not. Before Allah made Adam, He specifically said He was going to make a Khalifa on earth. So it was His plan that Adam be His Khalifa, and He created him to be His Khalifa. I think what this choice is that it was not like a conversation between, and if it was a conversation, it was. I'm not saying I have any idea exactly what Allah has done, but it could well be the case that there was no actual conversation between Allah and Adam, for like Allah says, okay, I've asked everyone else, will you be to be my Khalifa? They said no. Will you be my Khalifa? And Adam says yes. I think the saying yes is the fact that he was the first one who was able to be Khalifa of Allah. So the story, I think, is symbolic in that sense. Saying exactly the same thing, really. I mean, the acceptance is, it is like Adam didn't really have a choice, that Allah made him to be His Khalifa. But by making him to be His Khalifa, it actually gave him choice. So I don't think, you see what I'm sort of saying? I mean, because we have to be really careful, because people are often very sensitive about their interpretations of what is correctly stated in the Quran. I guess I'm trying to say that the choice is not a verbal choice saying, yes, I will be your Khalifa. The choice is automatically made by being able to be Khalifa, being the first one being able to be Khalifa. And you can take that and accept it or not accept it or consider it or whatever. Okay, so thank you very, very much, my dear brothers and sisters. Thank you very much.